Please don't do this. Instead, I'm going to show you a trick that will make your mixes sound tighter, louder, and way easier to master, going from this bad looking waveform to this control one and without peaks. But most producers refuse to use it. Why? Because they think it kills dynamics or makes your mixes lifeless, but that's completely wrong. In fact, this trick is how top-level producers get that pro sound without the struggling in the mastering. Let me show you how it works. In a song you have a lot of sounds. Here I have the kick, some drums, I have the bass, the leads, the chords. All these sounds have a small peaks up and down, making it more difficult to mix. Because when you set the right volume for it, maybe in another part it's too quiet. Instead, you can have an average volume that will make it way easier to put the right volume. But how is this going to help with the mastering? Well, let's use this trick first. We're going to send similar sounds to a group or bus channel, and here we're going to add a limiter. For example, here I have these three sounds for the chords and I'm sending them to this group or bus channel. Also here I have different lead sounds that I'm sending to this group or bus channel. And also here I have different mid basses that I'm sending here. And you can do this with everything. For example, you can put all the percussions. I will put the kick apart, for the break pads, for ambience, for effects. And then here in these buses, what we're gonna do is put a limiter. I like to use the L1 by Waves because it doesn't add latency and it sounds pretty transparent. Of course you can use any limiter, but for example Pro L2 maybe is too heavy to add it in a lot of different mixer channels. It's better to use it just for the mastering or maybe in some specific buses. So the way to use it is so simple. I'm going to play the bass line and I just need to reduce this. But how much? Like this? Completely flat? Of course not. My advice is to check this value here and reduce maximum 6 dBs. For my experience, if you go more than 6 dBs, usually it starts sounding overcompressed, starts adding distortion. Reduce a bit more. Somewhere around here is good. I recommend you playing the entire progression. As you can see, now it increases. But for example, if it's only one peak in one specific time, probably you're not gonna hear any distortion, so you can keep it like this if you want to. This was the mid bass before. And this is the mid bass now. This is before, after, before, after. For example, check here. You see this peak? Check here. You see this peak? It's gone. Check here. You see these peaks? They are gone. Let's do the same with the leads. Maybe that's too much. A bit more. Like this is good. This is the leads before. As you can see, we have a peak here, this one here, and then, boom, we remove them. Finally, let's do this with the chords. A bit less. I hear a bit of distortion or overcompression, maybe. Here distortion. In this one, for example, we see some peaks here, and this after, we still see some peaks. So we could limit a bit more. But in this case, a bit more limiting was causing some distortion in some parts. So maybe we could control it first with some compression and then with this limiting. But in the end, it's a pretty quiet sound, so it's not gonna affect that much. But Wildcrow, why limiting or not compressing? If you compress, you're gonna reduce those peaks. But if you want to remove them, to make them disappear, you need a really high ratio. And do you know what's a limiter? It's a compressor with infinite ratio. Also, from my experience, if you use these limiters where you don't need to touch the tag, release and all these things, you will not go wrong using them. And Wildcrow, how does this help in the mastering? When you master a song, you apply some EQing, saturation, you make it wider, you apply compression and also limiting. Let's come back to this example we had at the beginning of the video. Here I didn't have any limiter in any sound, and as you can see, there were crazy peaks appearing everywhere. If we try to master this track, when we put a limiter, it's going to happen this. When we play a limiter, it's first going to touch this peak right here. This peak is around 8 decibels louder than the average volume of the song. Then, when we touch this peak here, probably we are already reducing or killing 2 decibels of this peak. When we touch this one, this is going to be around 1 decibel or so limiting, but this one is going to be around 3 decibels limiting. Do you get what I mean? So when we start touching the kick, that is right here, this peak is going to get reduced around 10 decibels and probably is going to be distorting. But this peak is going to be distorting, these 2 are probably going to be distorting, this also is going to be distorting, these 3 are probably going to be distorting, and just touching the kick. We're not even limiting the song, like making it squeezed. So from here, to make the song sound really flat, squeezed and loud, probably we need to reduce 3 or 4 dBs more. So these peaks are gonna be distorting a lot more. Instead, if you got all these peaks in the mix, the mastering limiter is not going to be touching all of them. So now when we have the limiter, the first peak is gonna touch is probably gonna be this one, that when we reach the kick is gonna be like 2 decibels limiting. It's not gonna be distorting. So we're gonna be able to squeeze a lot more the song without distorting all these peaks. So you have a lot more space to boost that limiter and make your song sound louder without distortion. So remember, next time you mix a song, limit all the buzzes to get a better mix and a louder master, but don't go too crazy.